I'd like to start this presentation by adding a practical side to our discussion of projections and georeferencing system from the previous week's material. There will be cases when there's a conflict or a confusion between multiple data sets that you have in your project or in your map document or in your workspace. These conflicts can be caused by the files having, the data sets having different projections or different georeferencing systems, or most likely the problem will arise from a file having a lack of a .prj file. The .prj is a helper file, and the PRJ stands for projection. This is a file. It's a very small file that has information which defines the georeferencing system that the data set that it's associated with actually has. So it's a very useful helper file because it tells the software how to handle that file, what the units mean, where the origin is, and all kinds of things like that. There's always a confusion on a certain point, though, that the PRJ file merely reports the georeferencing system that was used to create the file and exists within it. The PRJ does not change the georeferencing file of the data. The file remains unchanged. If it was created and the units are representative of UTM, it'll stay that way no matter what the PRJ file is. So the PRJ does not control the georeferencing, rather it reports it to the program. So it has to be correct. It's kind of analogous to a person who's named Bob wearing a name badge, and things will work well if that person's name badge says Bob. That'll be correct. If that person wears a name badge that says Steve at the meeting, that'll just cause troubles. It won't actually change that person's name to Steve. It'll just make everything confused and inaccurate. So when trying to sort out a problem, layers that don't align, layers that end up thousands of miles or millions of miles apart, which can happen if there's inconsistent spatial referencing systems. There are a certain number of rules that one can remember that will help to resolve the problem. This is probably the most difficult thing that any of us will do in GIS, is sorting out problems around mismatching georeferencing systems and or a combination of that and lack of PRJ files. First rule is that the very first data set that gets loaded will define what the working space, the data space, or the map document is using for a georeferencing system. So this is likely. So this is actually a case in which the order in which files are loaded can make a difference, which is very rare. So a new ArcMap project starts with no georeferencing system attached to the workspace. It'll assume that georeferencing system either by the user deliberately setting that system or by inheriting that system from the first file that's loaded. Another rule, a layer without a PRJ file. I don't understand why in the 21st century there are still people who provide data sets or create data sets and distribute them without a PRJ file going along with them. But if such a thing is the case, the first thing the program will do is it will examine that the data, and if it looks like it might be a latitude-longitude type data set, if values range from 0 to 180, for instance, it will make the assumption that it is latitude-longitude. If it's some other system and it's not recognizable, then ArcGIS will assume with about an 80% chance of being wrong that the new data set is going to have the same georeferencing system as the currently active map document, the currently active workspace. And that's almost always a wrong, or usually a wrong assumption. The third rule is that happens is if a new file is loaded that does have a PRJ, that file will be correctly displayed. Something will happen called reprojection that will make that file align and match and coordinate with the existing project. So if a PRJ is present in every one of your files, you won't run into any of these problems. I guess this would be rule number 3A or 4, mislabeled as 3. There's another issue around georeferencing conflicts. If the workspace does not have a georeferencing system set, for instance, if somebody has loaded 3 files in a row that have no PRJ files, and the whole system is undefined, then most geoprocessing operations, such as the ones we're going to discuss shortly, won't work correctly, and or they may not work at all. If there's certain mismatches in georeferencing systems, there might be issues with geoprocessing operations. So these are things to watch out for. What's a process by which georeferencing conflicts can be resolved? First thing is to understand the rules, so to speak. Secondly is to use the proper methodology, which I haven't shown you yet, but if it ever comes up, you'll at least know what to ask for in your job or in a future course. Make sure that all your data files have PRJs attached or associated with them and that they are correct. And as a last resort, if you know what the coordinate system is of a new data file that seems to be problematic, you can change your entire map document to match that, and then all the other files which have good georeferencing will adjust themselves to follow along with that. So that's georeferencing conflicts, and I'm going to end right there, and because I'm reaching my 10 minutes.